Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors for our October 17th, 2006 meeting. Can we please have the roll call?
Supervisor Long? Here. Supervisor Flynn? Here. Supervisor Bennett? Supervisor Michaels? Here. And Supervisor Parks.
Thank you. And we don't have a moment of affirmation. I don't have anyone coming today for that. And so I would ask that we take that off the agenda for today. If seeing no objections, we'll remove that from the agenda. No objections, and that will be removed, and we'll move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. And Supervisor Michaels, would you please lead us?
Hand over heart, ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A motion to continue the minutes, second by Supervisor Michaels, and seeing no objections, the minutes will be continued. Now we'll go on to our agenda review, and Mr. Dursey, our interim CEO for the day, will give us the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to report there are no adjustments and updates to the agenda this morning.
Oh, that's great. You're doing a wonderful job. And now our next item on the agenda is our consent agenda items. These are items 10 through 18, and we do have a motion and a second, and seeing no objections, then the consent agenda item is passed. And we now move on to our public comment cards. I have two and a half public comment cards. We have Tad Maddock with regarding sewer plant health. Mr. Maddock?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Tad Maddock, 1085 Paquita Street, Camarillo Springs. I know the time limit, and I'll try to comply. As you know, you have 13 sewer districts in your Ventura County, and they're commonly known as sewer plants. They have two products, wastewater and the sludge. It is a black gooey musk laden with many diseases and so on. So therefore, it's a very severe problem of disposal. For some 13 years, the sewer districts have been treating the sludge, and the treated sludge has been sent to Kern County. Annually, over almost 2,000 trips, over 500,000 miles, and almost 1 million. Exporting this sludge elsewhere. As of January, as you know, Kern County voted to prohibit the dumping of this sludge. Camarillo district is trucking it 250 miles to Arizona, as well as LA City. Because of this health and disposal problem, currently in this county, there are other possible two options. As a previous director at Las Vegas Municipal Water District in Calabasas, I attended their dedication of the composting facility. They produce about 1,200 compost a month. They cost is about $250 a cubic yard, about the size of 2 bales of hay. Their cost is about $20,000 a month. Now, that composting facility had 2 fuel cells, but they did not work out. But the fuel cells in this area of the Santa Rita jail facility in the Bay Area is expected to cut their yearly electric costs by $260,000 by these fuel cells. Now, they obtained a loan from the California Energy Commission, and a 15-year loan to have these 2 cell fuels that they have going there at Santa Rita. The International Fuel Cell states that the state-of-the-art fuel cells convert human waste byproducts into compost, and were fueled by methane gas released as a start of the composting process. Within the fuel cell, the gas goes under a chemical reaction which creates electricity used to process the facility and provide the heat necessary to complete the first part of the composting process and the digestive action. These cells are capable of generating about 400 kilowatts, enough to serve the average home of about 300 American households. Because they are electrical chemical process similar to a battery, fueled by cells, provide a pollution-free source of electric energy. As you know, International Fuel Cells provide the fuel cells for the space shuttle. As you know, they're now going into automobiles. This is the wave of the future, I believe. So I'm suggesting a centralized composting facility in the nearby Camarosa sewer plant or near the sod turf growing fields. Land acquisition probably would be by eminent domain. At one time, you had some vacant land in that area, I understand. The design and construction of this centralized composting plant could be costly and an amount of several millions of dollars. The possibility of reducing its cost by utilizing the existing design specification for construction and also for the bidding construction procedure for using the format at the Calabasas. Funding possibility would have to be by federal possibilities and probably by state. The suggested composting facility would have solar panels on the roof for more non-polluting energy. The only authorized body to institute this idea is you people. Mr. Flynn, we tried about 5 or 10 years ago to centralize a saltation plant. John, we were 50 years ahead of our time. Now there is a second option. It's a futuristic thing. It's beyond the crest of the future cell. There is a plasma arc gasification. Plasma arc gasification, a lightning heating force that disintegrates trash and sludge into a hard rock cinder or a slag. It's the first plant in the nation. There are 2 in Japan. Sludge from the sewer plants could be vaporized into slag up to 800 tons, 600 tons a day. Such a plant now is in construction of 100,000 square feet in Florida. The slag will be utilized in road building construction projects. Geoplasma, as they are known, at a cost of $425 million, expect to amortize their cost by the sale of heat, electricity, slag, and steam sold to the nearby Tropicana products to power their juice plant turbines. Now, this company is privately owned. There is no public funding. This is a good option if you have a study program, what to do with your sludge. To continue trucking it to Arizona, that's insane. To dispose this sludge in Ventura County is not a possibility, as the county grows row crops for human consumption.
Mr.
And the E.
Maddox?
coli bacteria will not allow it.
Mr.
Kern
Maddox?
County and Arizona crops and cotton farmers, they use it for animal fodder. The sludge enhances the soil as a conditioner. The farmers welcome it.
Mr. Maddock, your time is up. I really appreciate what you have said
I'm going to
today.
present,
Our
the
board,
finding about plasma to your executive
thank you
office.
for providing that information. I'm a representative on the board with the Triumphant Sanitation District, which is part of a joint powers authority with Las Virgenes, and Las Virgenes is the one you're talking about that has the compost facility now. I would encourage you to come to a couple of those meetings and present your information. There's a big discussion right now at the high expense of that composting and concerns about it. So I think your support would be helpful if you want to see that continue. Thank you for your comments.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms.
If I
Hall.
might, to Mr. Maddox? Mr. Maddox, over here. Hi. Kathy Long. Okay, if you would go upstairs to the 4th floor and see Joyce Taylor and perhaps give her some of that information. I took some notes too, and we'll take a look at it.
I just gave it to the clerk.
Okay, that's good. We'll get it then. Thank you. Thank you.
Really appreciate that information. I've heard of also a form of taking sludge and making glass out of it. So there's just some real good things you can do if you've got the funds, and it certainly is more sustainable than what we are doing with it, I think. Our next public comment card is Carol Dean Williams, who had 2 cards in, and you also had one in for the affirmation, which we don't have this morning, but please feel free to have all your comments at public comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the way these pictures printed off the internet, so you could call them half-asses. That's the way they printed off. And this word ass translates from the Hebrew, and I don't know why Americans get so uptight. Carol Dean Williams, 61-year resident. Numbers 22:28. And the Lord opened the mouth of the ass, and she said unto Balaam. Now, Balaam is a Hebrew word, so I'm going to have to translate that into English. He forgot his water. For a moment of affirmation here, Joe Howry of the Ventura County Star tried to publish that John Flynn was a bully. Well, he only published that once. He didn't publish that twice, so John Flynn put his thumb on Joe Howery. Well, my moment of affirmation was... Pardon? Give me back my seconds here. My moment of affirmation is when Kathleen Wilson first appeared here, I called her a lazy-ass wimp. Well, I called Joe Howery on the telephone. Now, if you've never experienced this, I'm the only guy in Ventura County, I think, that's experienced this. Joe answers the phone. I know my reporters are lazy-ass whips, but I don't want you calling them lazy-ass whips. He screamed his head off in the phone, in my ear. That was a moment of affirmation, I'm telling you. Well, you know, the Ventura Unified School District is teaching wrong. They taught me homonyms. Homonyms aren't words that sound the same. Those are homophones. And notice, a homophone is a word which is pronounced the same as another word but has a different meaning or spelling. You know, you can't say assault without saying ass. You can't say assembly without saying ass. You can't say association without saying ass. And as we learned last night at the Ventura City Council, they can't manage their funds, and the city manager started talking about asphalt. I says, is that spelled A-S-S? Well, I have a new word. Asphalt. A-S-S-F-A-U-L-T. Well, that leads me into your public defender. Your public defender that I'm looking for the biggest ass in the county, and he kind of takes the award right now. California Penal Code Section 19.6, quote, a person charged with an infraction shall not be entitled to have the public defender appointed at public expense to represent him, unquote. Well, your public defender violated Penal Code Section 19.6. And you sat up there like a bunch of dumbbells. That's your appointee. So his character reflects on you people to allow this public defender to remain in office after violating California Penal Code 19.6. It's like John Flynn said, you guys are deaf. But the Lord is making you speak as dumbasses. Your appointee, public defender, has spoken as a dumb ass, and only the Lord could have caused that, and he accepted an appointment in violation of Penal Code 19.6. That's a misdemeanor. And here you sit and let the criminal justice system go to hell over your appointee. What's wrong with you people? What is wrong with you people? I'll
Mr.
say...
Williams, your time is up. You did get to exceed it a bit. And we'll move on to our next agenda item. And this is our board comments. And how about we start over on the left this time with Supervisor Michaels?
Yes, thank you. I don't have any comments other than to ask the board to adjourn in memory of these members from the 4th District, all of whom were veterans of our nation's military.
Thank you very much. And Supervisor Bennett?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the board to adjourn in memory of the people on this list. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Flynn?
Yes, ask the board to adjourn in memory of the engineers on the list.
Thank you, Supervisor Flynn. Supervisor Long?
Yes, I have a list also asking the board to adjourn in memory, and I apologize I didn't bring it up when we had whether agenda review or consent, but item 15 says Supervisor District 5, and it really should be 3. So if there could be a correction made to that.
Thank you.
That's it.
And that's it. And what I would like also is to ask the board close in the honor of these two individuals, and then also note that today is Mulligan Day. It's a golf course term that allows you a do-over. If you hit a bad shot, take a mulligan, try again. There are many, many stories about the birth of the term mulligan. Today, Mulligan Day is recognized as a day for giving yourself another chance, a day for a do-over. In the words of actress and businesswoman Mary Pickford, if you have made mistakes, even serious ones, there is always another chance for you. What we will call failure is not the falling down, but the staying down. So we'll leave that with us and move on to our next agenda portion of our meeting, and that's our regular agenda meeting, and that is item 25 with our healthcare agency. And see Ms. Davis here.
Good morning, Supervisor Parks, members of the board, Mr. Dursey. I'm Karen Davis, Deputy Director with the Healthcare Agency. The item before you today requests that your board ratify and approve a physician contract with Regal Medical Group. This agreement was negotiated to expand Regal's use of our county facilities and to improve the reimbursement rates to our system. Regal Medical Group contracts with many insurance companies, and they have asked that we be able to expand our network of physician coverage to the members that they have insurance contracts with. Regal has requested that this agreement become effective on October 1st so that they could expand their subscriber open enrollment process with many employer groups. The actual contract was not received until last week, therefore this is the earliest board date that we could bring this to your agenda. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, or a motion?
Move approval.
Motion and a second. Seeing no objections, that passes. Thank you for your report. Our next item on the agenda is from the Human Services Agency, another ratification approval, this in terms with United Parents. Good morning, Ms. Rivera.
Good morning, members of the board, Chairwoman Parks, Mr. Dursey. I'm Judy Rivera, Deputy Director with the Human Services Agency. We're asking for your board's approval and ratification to modify and extend the contract with United Parents. This contract provides much-needed respite care services to our foster parents. I'd like to apologize for the delay in bringing this modification to the board. The previous funding through First 5 ended on September 30th of this year. Thankfully, an analysis of the current year's state child welfare funding allocation revealed a new fund category that could be used for respite care. In addition, I'd like to point out that this contract modification request is only for a 3-month period. CFS will be competing for additional funds through First 5, and we will be submitting an application to First 5 in pursuit of additional funds for foster care respite services. We don't expect these funds to be awarded until after the first of the year. However, we should know around November of this year. Should we be successful in this competition, a new contract would make possible for expanded respite services for foster youth of all ages, not just 0 to 5. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you for the report. Are there any comments or questions or a motion? We have a motion and a second for a very good cause, and seeing no objections, that passes. Thank you. Good work.
Thank you.
Our next item is item 27. This is the County Executive Office, and it's from Mr. Ruffin.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Dursey. Item 27 is asking that your board approve 2 recommended actions. The first one is that you approve a new policy based on enaction of a state law, AB 1234. And the second recommendation asks that you amend 3 existing policies so that they will also comply with AB 1234 requirements. The state law requires counties and special districts to establish regulations by which members of the board can receive reimbursement. In working with the County Executive Office and the Auditor Controller's Office, we developed the policy that's before you today. Paragraph 2 of the proposed policy lists examples of the types of occurrences that qualify for reimbursement. To highlight just a few of them, One is reimbursement for attending educational seminars designed to improve skills and information levels. The second category is participating in regional, state, and national organizations whose activities affect the county's or special district's interest. The third one to highlight is attendance at community events and performance of official duties for the county or special district. The state law also requires that the board provide brief written reports of meetings that they attended at the expense of the local agency. So in your packet today is a sample form that could be completed by your office. And then if that's done, staff would recommend that during the board comment section of the agenda, you simply mention that you've got a meeting or meetings that you've attended and hand that form into the clerk of the board, similar to what occurred this morning for the list of items or individuals that board members requested adjournment on behalf of. The three, question? No, okay.
I have a question, though, before he leaves
Okay,
that
on this
particular
particular
subject.
subject.
You said to turn the reports in to the clerk of the board, and on here it says sample form of public reports of meetings and conferences at county expense to be turned in to, filed with the auditor controller.
What will happen
Do we
is...
have to do two?
No.
I don't.
No. We're asking that the report go to the clerk of the board, and then our staff will make sure that the copy goes to the auditor controller's office.
Okay, I just wanted...
That document is talking briefly about what the meeting was, the benefit to the county, and so forth. After that, the request is that the typical expense reports, those things that you've been doing for years and years, that make its way to the auditor's office, which would then include the invoices, receipts, and things that you've been doing in the past.
So double the paperwork thanks to our lovely state legislature, who didn't include themselves.
I think it quadruples the paperwork. Are you done with your report? You have more? Please continue.
Okay. The adoption of the new policy affects three of the existing ones. Those are the operating procedures for the Board of Supervisors meeting and agenda. Second one that's affected is the reimbursement of employee county business expenses. And lastly, the code of ethics. There are cases where we're just updating the existing policy so that there's a pointer to the new policy, or we're explaining which one takes precedent over the other, things of that sort. The new law, AB 1234, also requires ethics training, and your board completed that training a few months ago. Members of the executive committee have also completed it, and staff is working with scheduling and providing the training to the boards, committees, and commissions that have been established by board resolution, ordinance, and so forth. The letter was reviewed by county counsel in the auditor's office. The draft of the policies, all four, have been reviewed by the county departments. That completes my presentation, and I welcome any questions.
Comments or questions? Supervisor Flynn?
I think what the legislation proposes, not proposes, but demands, is something that's a good idea. I don't have any problem with it. But let me just ask our auditor a question. Do we have a policy on county credit cards? And if so, what is that policy?
I don't have it in front of me, but you should have one in each of your offices as far as the use for the credit card. For county, I'm assuming you're talking about the...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm assuming you're talking about the travel card, not the procurement card.
I have a concern about them that I would like to meet with you and the auditor about.
Glad to set that up.
Any other comments, questions? This will increase the amount of paperwork and time for the supervisors' offices, which aren't particularly, doesn't have a lot of staffing to begin with. What I would ask that if we are going to approve this, there's several things now that will have to take effect. Any like $20 luncheon that I'm invited to come give a resolution to for someone that they're honoring will now have to have 2 checks sent to it, one from my personal checking book and one from the county. And so there'll be 2 checks that will be sent for every luncheon. And we have to also contact the organization to find out, because they don't always stipulate how much is charitable, how much isn't. So that's extra cost too. And then if we send one of our staffs, I guess that again will come out of my personal home checking account. So I'm just wondering if the auditor controller can assist, maybe when we submit a reimbursement form, if your office can do the checking to find out how much of it would be from that the county can pay and how much the individual supervisor has to pay. That will save us some time of having to, figure out and break those down, and then maybe bill us personally for those.
Actually, I'm reading the policy the other way, that you would in fact pay for the event out of your own pocket, and you're seeking reimbursement for that portion that the county is able to pay, the non-contribution amount.
And I guess I'm looking at it the other way, which is trying to eliminate some of the extra work that this will entail. And then obviously there's some forms that will be filled out and all, and that all can be done. I'm just wondering if there's some way to help reduce the increased burden of staffing time, because sometimes it can take up to 4 phone calls just trying to figure out the information that is now needed.
The nonprofits are not consistent in printing on the invitation, but usually the part that they print it on is the part that you send back in. So I don't have that information when you send that in, but we can certainly assist in making the calls.
That would be a big help. And then the idea of, because if you're doing some, particularly chair of the board, I think may go to more events. If you're doing some 40 of these events in a year, I think that's probably somewhere about right. That's 40 separate times that we have to make, all these phone calls and trying to break these things down and get all the paperwork and make sure we split everything. And then it just becomes a lot of extra work for the $17 nonprofit or whatever that comes out of that luncheon. And that's the concern that I have. It's just a lot more work. Supervisor Long?
Well, I'd asked when we had this before us before that we might consider asking between the legal counsel and CEO if we could put together kind of a fact sheet that we could use, that we could send out to those nonprofits that we do often participate in, and that tells them what this new rule requires and allows, and if that might help, because then they would be, perhaps in their request to the office, would be more readily prepared to talk about what part of the event is charitable and what isn't. That might help.
And it is something you certainly want to attend these. The Board of Supervisors is already okay. We're signing the resolution. For example, the sheriff was Man of the Year at the YMCA, but that was, it required, I think it was about $150 or something, but just trying to keep these broken down. I know the YMCA prayer breakfast, however, the county paid the full $15, so it's, there's some questions I have. Just make sure that we are able to break these things down is an important thing.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I had a misunderstanding, and in speaking to county council, he believes that we can still do for our staffs advanced requests for checks, and then afterwards send in whatever is necessary. And then it's whether the auditor controller approves it or not. Now, I don't want to get into this here at the board meeting because it's all way too technical. But I think that's something that you need to solve, and that is, can we still send in the paperwork to request advanced payment for those events that we know will involve our staff? And then, if you can still do that, that alleviates a lot of, I believe, the burden that you're speaking of, because then you have the time to find out all of that information to submit the meeting report and the final to the auditor.
I guess the downside is that some things are paid and some are not, and I don't see consistency in that, so I don't want to stiff any nonprofit organization and make them wait for it all being processed, and you find out 2 months later that they didn't get their check, and then you have to pay it. So there's that problem. But why would it work for staff and not for the supervisor in terms of finding out later what the reimbursement is?
That question is directed to me.
Yeah.
The law deals with reimbursement. It addresses a circumstance where a board member incurs an expense pays money out of his or her own pocket, and then seeks to have the government reimburse. It does not address the circumstance where, in advance of an event, an employee or a member of a legislative body says, I want the government to pay for this. Madam Auditor, will you please issue a check to this organization in payment of the expense? The review that the auditor conducts would be the same, whether it be in advance or at the time of reimbursement. That is, it still has to be for everyone an event that arises in the performance of official duties and is an actual and necessary expense. Now, the reimbursement addresses and the AB 1234 addresses that circumstance post-payment by the member of the legislative body.
It doesn't mention anything about not paying for charities, though. That's something that came from your office, right?
That's entirely a matter of the law.
Right. Okay.
A question of a gift of public funds.
Right.
And
it's interesting because as my understanding and from being with the city and other cities, they're all reimbursed. So I wonder if this is something that will flow down to all the cities, because I think the county is setting a bar that's not set by any of the other cities that I know. Okay, so do we have some direction here, Supervisor Long?
The law applies to all.
Yes, I would hope so.
Yeah, so
but it doesn't apply to the state legislator.
No, I know that.
We have no choice on this.
I know.
Right.
It's mandated.
So now we're just talking about process right now.
Yeah.
How can we do this with the minimal amount of staff time and paperwork is the way I'm looking at it, not objecting to the law.
Well, I think if we can do as much as we can early education to our typical nonprofits and the groups that we deal with, and then I see from what the auditor just said that and legal counsel, it really is just the same process of submitting for reimbursement, and then if there is a disagreement on that reimbursement, then yes, we'll have to work it out. But at least if we have something we can send early on to interface that says, here's what we have to now live with, that may help us. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we don't run into 2 months later where we hear where there was a dispute, and really the dispute should, or the discussion should be between our board offices and the auditor, not the auditor and interface. Mm-hmm. I think.
I agree. The difficulty that we've been encountering is the definition of the official performance of your duties and how that relates to the function that you attend. Those are the issues that have been most discussed over the years.
Right.
Is what are the official duties you're performing by attending that function that the county needs to then recognize the expense.
Seems like that's the main question, is what is an official
Well, I think it's all very
duty?
well said.
Let me just ask that as a county.
Supervisor Flynn, members of the board, that is the ultimate question, and it is within the power of this Board of Supervisors to define what those official duties are. And that is why the legislature said in AB 1234 that it is up to the legislative body to describe in its policy the types of occurrences that are the performance of official duties.
So it is going to be defined in our policy.
Right. So that's the attempt in here where it lists the policy.
Under paragraph 2.
Yeah, guidelines and definitions. And this is something, though, that could be changed at any time by the body if it was found to be too wide open or too tight or whatever.
So we could live with this for a year and revisit it.
And again, just looking at the paperwork, let's see what we can do to help reduce the amount of paperwork is what I'm thinking of in staff time. But certainly, this is the right move. I just want to make sure that it doesn't overburden us unnecessarily.
Okay.
All right. So I appreciate the Auditor Controller's assistance on this too. Appreciate that because we'll need. I think we'll need it. All right. So is there a motion then to go ahead and move forward on this?
Move approval.
Well, may I just ask one more question in regards to credit card? expenditure, placing it on a credit card that the county issues. Does this policy, does this Assembly Bill 1234 at all impact that?
It does, because you'd have to follow the same rules for what is eligible for county expense.
I would just like to find a way, and I don't know the impact of what I'm asking for, a way to do away with credit cards, county issuance of credit cards to whomever it does now.
Probably means a whole lot of paperwork.
Wow, okay. We'll schedule the meeting to talk it some more.
Okay, so we do have a motion, and I believe we had a second, is that correct?
But I have a question to my own
Okay,
motion.
just a moment.
Just real quick. Under guidelines, definitions, et cetera, item F, attending community events in performance of official duties. Now, that's not to perform an official duty. That's to attend in the performance of your duty as an elected representative. So I think that's where we're going to start having questions, because it's always been my opinion, and I'm not going to change it, that elected officials, part of their duty is to appear at the request of citizens in their community and for events. And the only reason we get invited there is because we got a title by our name. Otherwise, they wouldn't send an invitation. They don't care about us schmucks, you know. And so I think we need to hammer this, you all need to hammer this out at some point in time, because it is my very strident belief that whatever we do, we're 24/7 and everything is in, other than political. That's the one clear place you can say, if it's a political party event or something like that, okay, we know that's not in the performance of being a representative, but you're going to struggle with this for a long time, I think, if you don't maybe next year come out and truly define it.
Thank you.
Personal opinion? Sorry.
Ms. Cohen, did you have a comment?
No, I concur entirely with what definition there, the easier it is to process.
Thank you.
Well, Madam Chair,
Supervisor Long?
in the motion, then, I would ask that we do have an annual report back to see how this is working, see where we have areas that we might need to work out, and also that we have something of a fact sheet design that we can all use in communicating with our nonprofits and groups that we do business and interact with.
I think that's an excellent
So
idea.
we're all using the same language, the same interpretation as best we can.
And also, I think it will be nice to hear where the other supervisors, the events they've gone to, will get now some feedback on that, and I think that will be enlightening too. So that's a good thing. Any other comments? We do have a motion and a second, and seeing no objections, that then passes. Thank you very much for that discussion, and look forward to seeing this go smoothly.
I tell you.
Our next item on the agenda is item 28, and this is the Healthcare Agency. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Dursey. My name is Linda Henderson, Director of Public Health with the Healthcare Agency. Before you is a request to sign a new grant with the state of California. These new funds are state and federal funds, the Outreach, Enrollment, Retention, and Utilization, OERU, which will allow us to increase and improve our enrollment and retention of children who are Medi-Cal and Healthy Family eligible. These new funds will also allow us to build on the success of our local single point of entry to Healthcare for Kids. And I'd like to add, with the gracious support of the board, we have enrolled over 1,400 children since the inception of this program, and we continue to work with these families to educate them on how to utilize healthcare services, so thank you for that. Any questions on this?
We do have one, Supervisor Bennett.
Yeah, not a question. I just want to congratulate HCA and HSA, two different departments in the
Yes.
county that have overcome sort of bureaucratic resistance to working together, have worked together on this really well. The children of Ventura County are benefiting, and probably one of the best kept secrets out there is every child that's walked in the door so far, we've been able to get qualified for health insurance. Every child.
Every child.
That's not happening in other counties, and it's a combination of things that's happening. But this really has been a remarkable effort, and I hope you'll pass on the board's appreciation back to HCA and your staff at HSA for overcoming the bureaucratic issues and finding a way to work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to move the recommended action.
Second.
Motion and second.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just an observation from the auditor's office. Usually your board has sought fixed-term positions for grant-funded projects. This is a 3-year grant, and they're asking for regular positions. I just want to make sure you were aware of that.
Thank you for calling that out. No, I wasn't. Those should be fixed term.
Well, I'd like to hear from staff as to why these are not fixed terms. Is there some rationale?
Generally, our approach on this one was, we felt that this was not, this will be an ongoing program, and we didn't want to put the fixed term because from an administrative standpoint, from our HR standpoint, there's some issues with the fixed term and how they fill the fixed term positions and that type of thing. So we thought from the administrative standpoint, it'd be more expedient to just continue on with the non-fixed terms in this case.
I guess the fundamental question I would see for the board is, are we going to continue this function? And I don't think there's any question that we're going to continue this function. It's been far too successful. We will continue outreach, enrollment, and retention. And one of the big challenges that we have is that many children get started in the system and then they fall out of the system because their parents aren't able to follow up, et cetera. So I think that rationale makes sense. If we think we're going to continue the system, we have a better chance of recruiting quality people for the program if they are not fixed term. So,
And may I also add that with this money, we are blocked from being reimbursed by the state for our application fees. For about 10 positions, that's about $170,000. So if this state money goes away, we will be able then to collect those funds again. And that would be able to allow us to continue this program with those funds.
Well,
Dr. Michaels?
If I might, it would have been helpful to have that in the report, because as you remember, several years ago when we were fighting the budget problems, one of the slippery slopes was, well, we think this program is going to continue and we want to do it better than anybody else, so we're going to overdo everything. And then, unfortunately, we came up against the budget wall, and this board made the decision that if the program went away, if the funding went away, the program went away. So I just want to caution that it's always easy to justify that you think something is going to continue. And certainly this is one of the things we want to continue. But, you know, a long-term budget look needs to be taken in that case, and money or potential funds identified over the years that could backfill this program or backfill what the state doesn't send in. So, you know, I'm not prepared to vote on it the way it is. Well, I take that back. It's a good program. What I would request, since it won't be my problem, is that staff come back to the board members with an analysis as to why it works to use regular term and what the future funding will be should state funding go away or fall short of the staffing costs, just for everybody's information.
Yeah, I think that would be in conjunction with all of the programs that we do have, as that we would evaluate. Our approach is that if state funding goes away, the program will go away in general.
And so that's, you know, you're looking at fixed term versus, or regular versus fixed, and if this, for some reason the money goes away, you know, I don't want to prolong this. I'm just saying that I'm not comfortable with that rationale, and so I'd like some more.
And I don't mind you prolonging it. I would also have I do also have this concern. So, Supervisor Long, did you have a comment? I see your light on.
No.
Okay, and that is just that this is a new program that we just began. We're staffing it good and getting it up and going. My question is, after it starts into kind of a maintenance cycle, if we still need that same amount of staffing. Supervisor Bennett?
One requires forklifts, right? Am I right?
I think Supervisor Michaels came up with a good compromise for us. I think that knowing that we have a policy about grants being fixed terms, as was pointed out, it would have been more appropriate for staff to clearly spell that out here, why what wasn't happening in this situation. I think that the rationale is very appropriate, and we ought to, I think, follow the suggestion, which is approve this now so that we can recruit good people and have that follow-up come back to us about what are we going to do after we made this particular exemption, et cetera. But I think for this program, you do definitely want to be able to recruit quality people, and I think that the staff has some good rationale for why this program will continue. We actually qualify for some other, if this grant goes away, we actually qualify for some other funding that would be there, and so it's,
That should have all been in the report.
and I agree. I mean, so certainly not apologizing for staff from that standpoint, but that's why we ought to have the follow-up, but we should still approve this action at this point in time. So I would still make the motion that...
I second the motion.
Do we have any objections to the motion? And does that motion include the follow-up?
That motion includes also Supervisor Michael's suggestion for that we have a follow-up with the explanation as to how we're going to fund this program if the grant goes away. Thank you.
Okay. And I would also, in that, look at the terms of how much staffing you need to, if you do get into this kind of maintenance mode, if this is consistent with that. Thank you.
Another request, and this is for the CEO's office, is that at any time that the CEO's office is going to recommend something that it doesn't follow the existing policy, that it be clearly stated in the board letter for the public and for ourselves as to why the decision was made to recommend, doesn't mean we're going to vote for it, but to recommend that it is outside current policy.
Thank you. I think good suggestion. Gives us a heads up. And we do have another comment from the auditor.
Just a comment, and everything, comments made and suggestions for follow-up are excellent, because we do want to stay within our policy and always be able to track these, particularly when it's new positions, and also and the effectiveness of the program and the long-term sustainability of it. I just don't want us to lose sight of that this is an excellent program. We're already seeing remarkable results, and we know that it falls in with what we have committed to do to really make sure that we have open doors for all children to have quality and affordable and access to health care. And staff's done good work with that, very good work.
Thank you. And then the cost savings of this as to another plan that was being proposed for the board to take on. It's nice to see that we're able to get these people qualified. I know the auditor controller has a question.
Yes, just a question of fairness. The policy we're talking about, I have not been able to find it in writing. So I just thought you should know that you have emphasized it time and time again, but I can't actually find it in writing anywhere, so maybe that's a good opportunity to bring it up.
I think the one place it's in writing is in the budget commentary for...
Could you turn your mic on?
Pardon me. I believe that it was written in the budget commentary a couple of times, the board's policy.
It has, but not in the actual guidelines themselves.
Maybe we should bring that back to the board then.
Yeah,
so
we'll
we
bring
can
it back.
adopt
We'll
the
get the
policy.
CEO's office to look at that.
Thank you.
And it should be in the policy.
I understand. Thank you, Supervisor Flynn. Supervisor Bennett, you have another comment?
And just while we're here, I see the representatives of HCA here, and Paula Renz, who sort of has been ramrodding this outreach program up to this point in time. So just along with Linda, I just want to compliment both of you for getting this thing off the ground and working well together. It is one of the real remarkable successes that is out there here in Ventura.
My team is used to this.
Could I ask another question regarding my concern that we have the staffing now to get this program up and going, and it does seem like there are, we obviously know there's some 25,000 other children that could get enrolled also that we need to outreach to, so we've only begun. But my question is, if it is found that that amount of staffing isn't required, where are we then?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
If the amount of staffing that this includes That isn't just for the 3 years? What if we find in that period of time that we don't need as many staffing because we've gotten the program up and going and it's not as necessary?
I think we would make those adjustments as we went along, but, I think we have good information on how many staff you need to process how many families and how many applications. HSA's been doing this a long time, and so have we. So I think we have a good sense about the staffing, but certainly we analyze that along the way.
Okay.
And would make adjustments accordingly. And
okay, that gives me confidence.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we do have a motion and a second on the table. Are there any objections to the motion? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you for the report, and thank you for the information, Auditor Controller. Our next item on the agenda is item 29, and this is regarding our Director of Public Health. And you're
Yes.
taking this?
Yes. Good morning. Good morning again. Nice to see you. Before you is a request to renew this contract with added revenue. In consultation with the state, we've discovered that we can use unreimbursed indirect costs from WIC to augment this program. The funds we're asking for will fund 2 new positions to implement a new state scope of work that focuses on lower to moderate income families to do social marketing, to increase healthy eating, and of course to impact the rise in childhood obesity. Are there any questions for this one?
Questions, comments, or a motion? We have a motion and a second, and seeing
Again, ditto on the position.
Okay, when you say ditto on the position, I don't know exactly what you mean by ditto.
Are we on item 29? And it's a regular position being asked for.
And so you're clarifying that this is a regular position for us?
Correct.
Thank you. And Mr. Dursey, did you have a comment?
No.
Seeing no objections?
This isn't a grant, this is a state program.
Okay, hold on, we do have some questions, so before this is over, Supervisor Bennett, you have a question?
You're saying this is a grant program, this is a state program, not a grant program?
Well, it's an ongoing state program, isn't it? It's not a pilot study or a 3-year guarantee.
It's a 3-year contract period as listed in recommendation number 1.
With the state.
Yes.
Which, our policy, since it's not in writing, what is our policy?
Well, our policy is not in writing, but in general, if it's a specific grant, we analyze that and try to make it a fixed term so we can track that grant. If it's, frankly, a lot of our money comes from state and federal funds, as you well know. And that's continually going, and we don't treat those all fixed terms. I mean, under the strict interpretation, all of those would be fixed terms. So that's where we try to get into some administrative efficiency versus, tying it into the specific policy, which it's a general guideline and not a policy in that specific sense.
So I think the help that could come from the auditor would be because that clarifies our policy. If we find that it is a grant program, that is sort of a standalone grant program, that's what we want to have become fixed terms. If it is a contract from the state for some fixed period of time, but it falls under this category of more administrative efficiency, I don't think that would be our intention to make those fixed terms, or else we'd have trouble recruiting quality people.
I think that's what the policy is. Am I not right?
Yeah. So I was really pointing that out to ask the auditor. That's where the auditor could help us.
And in general, that's kind of the guidelines that we follow in evaluating whether or not they should be fixed terms. There's a couple of good examples later on in your board package that will show that no, those are fixed terms. Those are specific grants for a specific time period that we request the department to have fixed terms, so we can track those a lot closer.
Thank you.
The recommendation very clearly says, Madam Chair, a renewal contract.
Thank you. Supervisor Michaels.
I was just going to make the comment that tons of the things we do as a county are contracts with the state in the ag office and everywhere else, and I guess I wasn't very clear on my thinking, which is when we've had state contracts, we've considered those regular ongoing work that we're doing for the state or on behalf of the state. The only thing when we get these grants that are very specific is when we've looked at them.
Exactly.
And they're not guaranteed ongoing.
Exactly. And so we'll have an example of that on our next agenda item, too, as I see. Mr. Zimmerman, did you want to comment on this item?
The discussion of fixed-term positions, is that?
Yes.
I was kind of here. The issue, really, that looking at it is there is a policy, not necessarily a policy, the personnel rules and regs allow a fixed-term position for a 3-year period. However, we have many grants that continue on and perpetuate, or funding shifts a little bit here and there, but the program services are going to continue. I ran down here, so.
You're in great shape. I'm surprised I don't hear the heavy breathing and listening to it on the 4th floor, and here you are.
So the issue is the previous item that went was a program, and an expansion of an existing program that has been successful and continue and is being proposed to continue and perpetuate on. And so the regular positions were recommended in that case to do that. The primary reason why it was recommended that way is it's very important in the order of layoff that occurs associated with bumping rights in these positions. And giving a grant position that is perpetuating, if we put them in the fixed terms, then they will be the first out of the door, in which it's a program we plan on continuing on. So that's what we need to start reconciling, is some of this fixed term activity, as well as, and we need some further clarification in the personnel rules and regs and so forth, is oftentimes we get grant positions and grant programs established, and what we do is transfer individuals in from a regular allocation into those fixed positions. And our first interpretation is that they lose some of their rights associated with the protection of civil service and the bumping rights that we have. So I do agree that the fixed term, how we've been treating them and so forth, is a little bit inconsistent, a little bit confusing right now, and it would be helpful if we could come back and study that in greater detail to understand the ramifications of why a fixed term position is appropriate and why not. Now, we have established a policy in the budget, and as evidence in the last couple of years, that if the funding goes away and decreases, we will go through a layoff priority order status, and that's what we would really fall as the ultimate authority in establishing position and who stays and who doesn't. So that helps.
Excellent information. I'm glad you came down. Supervisor Bennett, did you want to comment?
If I could, just in the interest of good government, what we don't want to do is either decrease the ability of the county to recruit quality people for positions, or discourage quality people from taking a position because it is fixed term. Our goal was simply to find some smooth mechanism that would allow us to track these grant positions so they didn't kind of suddenly get morphed in, and all of a sudden we felt like, these were positions that we had to keep on funding we wouldn't consider. So I would just offer, we have a policy right now. To the extent that that policy can be improved upon, I just personally, without making this a motion of the board, I'd personally be delighted to have you come and say, here's even a better way to track these positions and at the same time not disadvantage the county as we try to hire the best, because we have a recruitment problem here. We're going to continue to have a recruitment problem as we have all of these layoffs taking place, all these retirements taking place of the baby boom generation, et cetera. So we need to be as smart as we can to try to accomplish both those goals, and if one is artificially tying up the other, and we can find a better way. So it's just an open invitation. Don't get straitjacketed by this board policy.
I appreciate that.
Make it work. Thanks.
We'll do that.
Thank you. It's excellent discussion. Look forward to having some better clarification. I know we can get, into a situation, I think we did with a special prosecutor just for the East County. We had a special grant and was able to provide that. When the grant went away, all of a sudden, we were having to decide, shall we take and just continue to pay for someone just for one portion of the county and not for all. So it's important to be able to keep track of these so we know for sure and let everybody know that these are just special grants. When money goes away, the program goes away, or in this case, we're considering, keeping the program and expecting the revenue from the state to continue. It's not a special, just, 3-year term and that's it. And great comments about making sure we have quality staff and how we can assure that. All right, so we, on this item, we have, do we have a motion on this? It was a long discussion, and a second. So seeing no objections now, that passes. We do have a 9:30 time certain, but item 30 should be a pretty quick one, and I think it addresses our concerns that we've just had before. Yes, if you'd like to do that one, then we'll go right to our 9:30.
Thank you so much. Before you is a request to add a position to continue the 5-a-day power play program, also a state contract. This position was previously provided by the UC Cooperative Extension. They are no longer providing that service, so we are going to be taking that in-house. And this allows us to focus on families with 9 to 11-year-olds, again, on healthy eating, activity, and to decrease obesity in childhood.
And do we have a motion? Good. And second, and seeing no objection, that passes. And now we'll go on to our special 9:30 time certain item, and I think Supervisor Long is going to be doing this.
I am, thank you, and good morning. I'd like to invite up to our podium our Ventura County Medical Resource Foundation, some representatives we have in to receive this resolution that is going to acknowledge the Ventura County Medical Resource Foundation 50th anniversary celebration. And I see we've got Vicki Chandler, who's Executive Director of VCMRF, and we've got Dr. Cheryl Lamming, who is our current chair. Is that correct? Thank you. I sit on the board, but Larry Matheny's here. He's also a member of the board. Michael Powers is a member of the board. And I don't see Dr. Leo Tauber, but he may show up. And Judith Overmeyer. I don't see Judith. But anyway, these are just some members of the board. Paul Lorenz. There's Paul. Paul Lorenz is a member of the board. And I know the board knows the great value and the contribution that VCMRF has for over 50 years now contributed to our county healthcare system. But I'd like to, if I might, just call out some of those highlights in this resolution as we start the celebration of the 50th anniversary of VCMRF. The mission is to raise funds on behalf of the healthcare agency for Ventura County to support the programs and services that benefit all of the residents of our county, and especially those that encounter barriers to access. The VCMRF board does consist of 30 business and civic and medical leaders and a community leadership council with an additional 32 members on that. For 50 years, VCMRF has been providing life-saving medical equipment for Ventura County Medical Center, funding nursing and medical student scholarships, providing screening of underserved men for prostate cancer and low-income women for breast cancer, funding programs and services to aid sick babies and children, and providing prevention education to our most vulnerable population here in our county. The Medical Resource Foundation has also funded research into Parkinson's disease, provided funding for that research, funding for residential substance abuse treatment for mothers participating in the Superior Court Dependency Drug Court program, and expanded health care services and education in rural health centers. The Medical Resource Foundation convened the Cancer Task Force, who represents, members represent 25 different organizations, and have developed a 3-year strategic community plan that is well underway, convened and developed a communicable disease program for migrant farm workers. We're all familiar with the Boomerang Campaign, which does certainly contribute to the work of the Medical Resource Foundation from our wonderful county employees who donate a percentage of their paychecks to support the programs that the VCMRF operate and run and support. The Medical Resource Foundation has $2.7 million in its endowment fund at the Ventura County Community Foundation. In 2006, we're donating approximately $350,000 for medical equipment, programs, and services for public health department, ambulatory care clinics, and behavioral health. All of the services funding is received from our wonderful community, individual donors, foundations, grants, events, and many, many other resources. Need to need to note that one of the big celebrations coming up is the fundraiser. It's the first annual Leo Tauber, MD reception that will celebrate the 50th anniversary, and that's going to take place on Thursday, November 2nd. And then, of course, in February, we're going to have the 14th Annual David C. Fainer Awards Dinner. Most of us are familiar with that, February 2nd. And then an annual Festival of Flavors will take place next year in September. So it really is my pleasure, as the newest board member to the Medical Resource Foundation, to certainly serve there and to work with these wonderful people who come from our community, who really give and get and time, talent, and treasure to the work of the Medical Resource Foundation. And as we celebrate 50 years of providing these invaluable services to our community, and to really appreciate what the work of the Medical Resource Foundation board members do to touch lives, lift spirits, and make our community a much better place to live. And I'll step down to present this and invite you, Dr. Lamming, to certainly make some words, anything you'd like to say regarding the work, and any of the board members also. 50 years is something we need to take time to celebrate and appreciate, and I'll step down to do that.
Thank you very much for inviting us. We have the opportunity to work many long hours in this community, and we have a mission to really fill that need for the people in Ventura that have lesser access. And I think, quite frankly, while we do that, we have lots of fun. I invite you to join us anytime. We have fun events, and I think what we've built over many years, I've been with the board over 10 years, I think you build long-standing commitment to this. And quite frankly, we are dreadfully excited this year to be providing almost $350,000 to the county to help aid those patients I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. And if we could take the board members who are present, please come down. Let's take a group shot here. And Vicki, come on.
Right behind you.
We're right behind you.
And past board members.
Hey, any past board members, please. Hi, dear. Come on.
All right, then I'll go.
Shy bunch. Except for one.
All right.
Bye.
Did Judy come down?
Judy. Michael.
Okay, did you get it? Okay, all right. All right, we thank you.
You want to take it with the other camera,
Oh,
Dee
okay.
Dee?
Okay.
Just in case.
And please mention again the November 2nd date to the board members.
Let's make sure we got these.
Good. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Should I just say?
Yep. Invite them. Invite them.
Yeah, go ahead, you can do it. To the November 2nd.
We'd also like to take the opportunity to invite you to our 50th anniversary launch, the Leo Tauber event on November 2nd.
Thank you very
From
much.
November 2nd from 5:30 to 8 at the Tawatopa Club.
November 2nd. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work in raising those funds for the needy who need medical assistance. Really glad that we have you. Great organization. Our next item on the agenda is a presentation of a resolution proclaiming October 2006 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And Supervisor Long, who's now back in her seat, is going to do this one also.
Thank you, and I hope we have present Nicole Gonzalez, Interfaith Partnership Co-Chair, Jill Reed, Coalition Partnership Co-Chair, and Catherine Dugan, who's from our DA's office. I saw Catherine present. To accept this domestic violence resolution on behalf of the Partnerships for Safe Families and Communities. And we do this every year, board members. We'd like to not do this every year, but it is part of what we do in our community, and that is to look at October, declare National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and to really reach out to educate and work with our community and families that are confronted with domestic violence. Across our country, it certainly is one of the domestic violence traumatizes victims, endangers children. harms families, and threatens communities. 1/3 of women who are murdered each year are killed by their current or former husband or partner. Each year, nearly 5.3 million incidences of domestic violence occur among women and 3.2 million among men. According to the most recent data available in 1 year, over 7,900 reports of domestic violence were made in our county to law enforcement agencies. And we know that children who are exposed to domestic violence too often grow up to inflict violence on others, and that create this vicious cycle of violence. So through the Ventura County Partnerships for Safe Families and Communities, the designated Child Abuse Prevention Council, Interfaith Children Family Services, the District Attorney's Ellie Liston Crime Victims Assistance Program, the Coalition to End Family Violence, have all come together to take a stand against domestic violence and to strengthen the services in our community for victims and their dependents. So by the board's proclamation today, we recognize October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in our county. We urge all of our citizens to join in the important observance of this month, reaffirming our commitment to see that victims of domestic violence receive our respect, our understanding, and our help throughout the year, and that the more we can do to support the organizations who reach out to help these families and to help children and to help women and partners who are victims of domestic violence, the stronger fabric we're going to have in our county to really make a difference. So it's my pleasure to bring this down to you and invite you to make a few comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us here today on behalf of the Ventura County Partnership for Safe Families and Communities, the designated Child Abuse Prevention Council, and each of our agencies, Interfaith Children Family Services, the Coalition to End Family Violence, and the District Attorney's Victims Assistance Center. We're delighted to be able to come in front of you today and really appreciate your recognizing Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're thrilled to have an opportunity to collaborate together and come under this important issue. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, members of the board. As many of us know, domestic violence is an ever-growing problem within our community. Although many are reluctant to address this issue, it has been the task of the Domestic Violence Committee for the Ventura County Partnership for Safe Families and Communities, the designated Child Abuse Prevention Council, to bring awareness and support to this ever-growing problem. At this time, I'd like to pay recognition to the recent efforts and accomplishments of this committee. This year, the committee has worked in collaboration with medical professionals, law enforcement, and many other professionals statewide to create and distribute a reporting form and instruction sheet to accompany the OES 920. These forms were designed with the intent of bringing clarity to the medical professionals' responsibility to report suspicious injury. They have been and will continue to be distributed to medical professionals throughout the county. Also, the Domestic Violence Committee is proud to once again sponsor the annual Domestic Violence Awareness Month Candlelight Vigil, which is organized by the Líderes Campesinas. This is an event centered on raising awareness regarding domestic violence issues and the impacts it has on our community. This year's vigil will be held on Friday, October 27th from 6 to 8 p.m., beginning at Iglesia Cristo Rey Church in Oxnard. The Domestic Violence Committee continues to explore new ways and opportunities to bring awareness and support to the community. We'd like to pay recognition to Judy Rivera, who is the head of the Ventura County Human Service Agency, Adult, Children's, and Family Services, as well as many of our board members here from the Ventura County Partnership for Safe Families and Communities, such as Krista Klippinger, Diane Casey, Leah Davis, and Lori Steinhauer, and many of our other partners. Thank you.
Stand up. All the partners, stand up.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. One of the statistics around domestic violence that is the most stunning to me personally is that 44% of homicide victims that resulted from domestic violence have been seen in an emergency department within 18 months of their homicide, and 93% of those victims were seen for an injury in an emergency department. It emphasizes again to me that domestic violence can escalate from what begins with a shove or a slap or harsh words all the way to a homicide. Once those crimes become homicides and those more serious felonies, it's hard for us to even measure them because they're reported as misdemeanors and felonies by Department of Justice, and it's really hard to identify how many of them actually were, the beginning was domestic violence. If we are going to respond to domestic violence effectively, it does require a partnership between government and community agencies. The district attorney is very committed to that partnership. In our office, we have mental health counselors from the coalition and Interface. We have civil legal assistance attorneys from the coalition to help the victims with matters like child custody and dissolution. We recently have from the coalition an attorney with a specialty in immigration because battered women have opportunities under our immigration law that they are not aware of, and we want to make sure that they understand what all of their rights are. It is that partnership that provides for victims of crime that comprehensive range of services that is necessary to stop this cycle of violence that is occurring in our families, not only between spouses, but between parents and children, between parents and their elderly parents that are residing with them. Family violence is one of our most challenging problems in our community, and I'm pleased to stand here this morning with these other agencies who work so hard with the District Attorney's Office in addressing this problem, and I thank you for acknowledging it. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank you also for your hard work. It's a very difficult work that you have to do, and it can be very heartbreaking, and it's good to see their support out there, and the coordination of their efforts is really doing good things. I really appreciate it. And this really goes across all demographics, too. It isn't just something that affects low income. We see it in the high income areas. It goes across the whole spectrum. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Another one of our awareness activities is also looking at the problem that we're seeing with methamphetamines and the growing use of methamphetamines, and a lot of time that can lead to violence also. So you see the connection also between alcoholism as well as drug use that can lead to violence too. So it's all part of our efforts trying to reduce this and eliminate it in the end. Thank you so much. Our next item on our agenda is item 31. This is a policy matter, and it's Supervisor Steve Bennett's bringing it to us. Supervisor Bennett?
Thank you very much. This item, I think, recognizes that there are two problems that hopefully we can start to make some progress on. We have an affordable housing problem in Ventura County overall. We also have a recruitment and retention problem with our county employees because of high housing prices. And if we simply sit back and let the private sector continue to build market rate housing, I don't believe we're going to solve this problem. Overall, my goal is to use the precious land that we have left to build a much higher percentage of affordable housing relative to market rate housing is what we really ought to be doing. And we have a special opportunity right now. We have a small parcel in downtown Ventura that is right next to a city parcel also. I've had some informal conversations, and I see the mayor of Ventura here, Carl Morehouse. I've had some informal conversations with some people at the city level. They have already been out there and working on the whole issue of trying to create affordable housing for their city employees and to some extent the county employees also that live within the city. They have a subcommittee of Mayor Morehouse and Councilmember Andrews and Councilmember Fulton that are on that. I've had some informal conversations with Councilmember Brennan and Fulton and Andrews, I have not been able to talk because of Brown Act violations. I get to the point where I can't talk to more than 3 of them about that, so I haven't had a chance to talk to Councilmember Morehouse. But this parcel the development potential of this parcel is greatly enhanced by working in collaboration with the city, just like the development potential of the city's parcel is greatly enhanced by working in collaboration with the county on this particular parcel. It's certainly a very appropriate place for city and county employees right across the street from City Hall. And we're talking about affordable housing is what we're trying to do here, not simply an incentive for our top-of-the-line people, but affordable housing because our county employees, some of them certainly need to qualify for affordable housing and do qualify for affordable housing. And it would just be affordable housing with a particular angle there in terms of being our particular property. It is much more likely that we can create an affordable housing option by starting with land that we already own because we avoid some of those issues in terms of land acquisition costs, et cetera. In addition to that, I think it's very appropriate, a goal that we have, and I think it's a goal that I would like us to push much more up the court here over the next year, is to deal with the issue of emancipated youth and housing for emancipated youth. We need more of that in the West County, and my research indicates that the best solution for us is to have a few units in different locations around the West County, rather than one area where you congregate a large number of emancipated youth. And so there are some other places that I think also are right for us to consider emancipated youth. But how appropriate it would be for a few of these apartments to be for emancipated youth, and those emancipated youth to have city and county employees as their adult role models that can, to some extent, play that role of the extended family that is missing in so many of the lives of our emancipated youth. So I think it can be a great opportunity for us. It will require a number of fairly tricky things for us to analyze, and county council will have to be involved, and I've had some conversations with county council about how do you do this and what kind of restrictions can be put on legally and not put on, et cetera. So it will take some good work on the part of staff, but this would be a step. This would be a direction to the CEO's office to have those conversations, begin those conversations with the city about this, and see if we can pull something off with the goal of creating affordable housing both for the workforce, and another term often being used out there is workforce housing for city and county employees, as well as some units for emancipated foster youth. And that all has to be worked out with the city. So with that, that's a basic overview. I certainly look forward to hearing from Mayor Morehouse in his comments. I assume you submitted a card, right? Great. And hearing board members' thoughts on this. Thank you.
And we do have a couple of cards. Would the board like to go to those and then have some discussion? Okay, then we have a couple cards. Our first speaker is Jeanette Sanchez, followed by Mayor Morehouse.
Hi. Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Supervisors. I just want to go on the record. My name is Jeanette Sanchez. I'm with SCIU Local 998. I'm the Communications and Political Coordinator. And just to simply would like to go on the record to state that I think the discussion or the recommendation to discuss affordable housing is great and in much need. I would recommend, though, or stress, too, that in or within those discussions, if the possibility of looking at the county and city employees' salaries and wages be also considered, possibly an increase in order to be able to afford housing in Ventura, since, you know, prices do go up on everything. Wages sometimes just kind of stay wherever they are. So I greatly appreciate that in consideration of our members, but as well as other just county and city employees in Ventura. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Our next speaker is Mayor Morehouse, City of Ventura. Good morning, Mayor.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the board, and thank you for allowing me to address you. I appreciated Supervisor Bennett's depiction of who he had a chance to talk to and why. I just found out about this yesterday. I apologize. I was ironically out of town all long weekend in Indiana myself, so they didn't have a chance to chat with me. But I appreciate the supervisor bringing this forward. As he indicated, as you're no doubt aware, a year ago, Councilmember Andrews and I brought forward to the entire council a consideration to create a task force to look at the problems with housing and housing need in the city of Ventura. We've added to that subcommittee Councilmember Fulton. We have now been meeting for almost 10 months. We have had regular meetings with not only our staff in varying degrees. We've done a survey of our staff and tried to find out where our needs were, but we realized quite importantly that we are not the only entity that is having problems with housing and retaining employees and as the baby boomers retire, enticing new employees. We looked around at the major employers, and clearly the county is one of the major employers who has residents in our city, and we have invited you to send representatives to a group that we're building off of that includes the Community Memorial Hospital, the Ventura Unified School District, the Community College, Patagonia, and several others. And so those discussions are just really beginning to get some substance. We're also aware that there's a similar parallel universe going on at county level with something that sprang out of the Visita project, the home project. There's another similar interest that's looking at countywide, and we hope that someday we can maybe build some synergy and link those together. I think that in terms of where the city's progress is, we're actually a few steps ahead of the countywide efforts from home. That being said, we're looking at many silver bullets, not just one, that will affect the housing issue. And clearly the people that we have invited to the table, including the county, are looking at resources that we can do to make housing affordable. And that includes not only money, but it sometimes may include actual land. And there are many instances where the city is the landowner, and this is one of those wonderful opportunities where the county is the landowner. As well as you know, we're in negotiations for the building that sits behind City Hall that the county currently owns. And so we're looking at opportunities to partner, and since we have a parking lot next to this facility and we're all in need of housing, it's clearly an opportunity for us to work together to find a way to address the needs. Clearly the city is also looking at trying to find more housing downtown as part of our response to stop sprawl, but also to densify our downtown and make our businesses that are now starting to emerge down there to have a built-in clientele and get us back to the way we actually were as a city some 20, 30, 40 years ago. So at this point, I'd simply want to thank Supervisor Bennett for bringing this forward, encourage your board to pursue this. We are more than happy as a city to engage in these discussions and work towards a mutual end where we can find a way to cooperatively develop this property and make it achieve something so we can, again, get to the level of affordable housing. And I thank you again, Supervisor Bennett, for your efforts on this. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you for this
Thank
effort.
you for your comments. Supervisor Bennett?
How was the fall foliage in Indiana?
Just starting to turn. If I'd stayed another week, but it was getting nippy, so.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, and also, thank you for coming down and those comments, and I do hope you appreciate this sort of, the Brown Act sort of situation that I had in terms of these conversations. So, thank you very much.
Do we have comments from the board? Supervisor Michaels?
Not a comment so much as a question, but I wanted to wait in case it was answered by one of the speakers. And that, I guess my biggest question is, will this be a public-private venture? In other words, I don't believe that the county will be the developer. And this may be too early for these questions, but I'm getting them out there because there are things that concern me, which is irrelevant anymore, but I am concerned about being a landlord. And so I think as we look at the potential, and I quite frankly think it has potential, I'm always a little leery of government getting into private business, but you know, we're not getting anywhere with this problem, and HCA tries to recruit residents for the hospital and nurses and all of the support tech people that we need, and it's very difficult. If they don't live here already, then it's really hard to get them here. But I would hope that the county and the city, when they're looking at this, would look at the best way to get out from under being a landlord. Provide it with the rules and regulations by perhaps, the board voting to provide the land or whatever. But I've had these discussions before in other organizations that I belong to, and there would be nothing more disastrous for us as electeds to have an issue where one of the tenants was removed or not leased to. Where are they going to be? They're going to be right there every week forever. And so I think we need to be involved in the discussions, but I think there needs, in the end, if we move forward, there has to be an arm's length. There has to be an operator that takes care of that under the policies designed by the cooperation of the city and the county.
Thank you. Other comments? Supervisor Long, then Supervisor Flynn.
I think this is a worthy exploration for us to undertake. We've had the conversation, frankly, last summer when we had our retreat and talked about just the succession planning in one of the areas of our hard-to-recruit employees and what the challenges or barriers are. And we know housing is a significant challenge. And times are changing, and I don't think that that if we just sit and wait for market-driven solutions, that they're going to come as readily as we may need them to come, particularly when it comes to, again, public employment, employees for the city, and hard to recruit. And when we're hearing from our nurses and our sheriffs and our firefighters even difficulties, I would clearly be supportive of looking at something that has that priority attention to it, so that it would be those hard to recruit positions. But I think, first of all, it's worth exploring. Look at an opportunity where you have within a city land that is jointly adjacent and potential for it. As I know, we've looked at Lewis Road, and we'll continue to work on the infrastructure challenges with Lewis Road. Part of that dream out there has also been to have housing for our domestic violence community, but also some housing for emancipated foster youth. We know that that's a significant challenge for these young people who are being emancipated, which all sounds wonderful and good for an 18-year-old, but the stark reality is it's very challenging for them. So kudos to you to bring it forward, and let's explore, see what maybe will come out of this and have a template that can be used county-wide.
Supervisor Flynn, you had some comments?
Yeah, I do. First of all, it indicates and it shows, and it's a step towards recognizing that housing is really a major issue that we have here in Ventura County. Affordable housing has kind of lost its meaning, I think. I'm more talking about low-cost housing than affordable. Low-cost housing can put some kind of a cap on it. But in the discussion, you need to think about, could this become a negotiating issue with the unions? Depends on how many housing units are finally built. Is that something we want to get into? Could it be an entitlement issue that we would have to address somehow? It's something we need to get into, but I would not want to see it simply for public employees. It would have to be for workforce, the total workforce, which would include public employees, but it would include private employees too, or employees who work in the private sector. So I could never support something for simply one group of employees. It's got to be open to all groups of employees, because we have a problem. Especially in my district, we have a heavy problem of affordability, and it's also a problem in other parts of the county. And that is affordability, but low cost low-cost housing is what has to be emphasized. So if my constituents say, oh, you're building housing for public employees, and we make only, Supervisor Flynn, we make $30,000 a year, what about us? We're hard workers. We build things. We serve the population, too, only we serve it in the private sector, but we're still serving it. So we need to, and I think Ventura has looked at it in this way, as workforce housing, not simply limited to public housing, at least based on the article I read this morning in this morning's paper. So that would be my caution, and that is all the issues I listed: entitlements, union negotiators. The person that spoke today is from a union, which kind of emphasizes the point that I'm trying to make. But it had to be much broader, a much broader look than just a narrow look of public employees. Public employees to be included, but not others to be excluded.
Thank you. My comments, I just really want to thank the City of Ventura for their forward-lookingness, as well as Supervisor Bennett. This is a piece of publicly owned land. We could just be looking at more government offices on here. We could be looking at selling it to the private sector so that we can get our assets into cash. But I like the idea when you have public land that's owned by the public, how can we use that to assist the public? And I think it's really important that we hold on to the land that we do have and be able to use it for the benefit of the public when land is so scarce these days to do any kind of projects on. I also really like the idea of being able to provide some homes for emancipating foster youth. And some people may not understand what that is, but when these children who are in the foster program turn 18, they're basically on the streets and they're homeless. They're expected to find a job, completely pay for themselves, and if you don't have a place to live, it makes it really difficult to find a job and take a shower, and not to mention transportation. So this is an excellent location, I think, because there is good transportation in the City of Ventura. So I really like that aspect of this program. I also like the thought that having some others other than emancipating foster youth living here is a good idea. I know there are other places around that only have the foster youth, and 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, I have a couple of those. They need some parental guidance, I think, still, or at least a mentor in terms of older adults or adults that are in 18 to 19. So I like that idea of the combined aspect of it. I also like the idea that we are being able to help the public with public land. We have kind of two hats that we're wearing here. We provide services. We help to provide a safety net to those in society who would otherwise be homeless. That's one of our duties on the Board of Supervisors. The other hat we're wearing is we run an organization with thousands and thousands of employees, and we want to make sure and be able to recruit the best. This is a very small site. It's not going to have any significant effect in terms of trying to help our workforce in the county. I'd like to look at, and this will have to be a subject for a later time, of being able to provide low-interest loans, for example, to our employees for first-time home buyers to help them get a home. They're already on our payroll. They're not going to ditch town and not pay back their loan. But I think this is an incentive that we can use that will have a more broader application than just a few units in Ventura. So that's where I'd like to go in my thoughts about how to help our employee workforce. As for this item, the part that really has me hooked is the issue of the emancipated foster youth, and for that specifically I can support this.
Comment just real
Supervisor
quickly
Michaels.
before we vote. And I always sound like I'm totally opposed to something, but I'm not. These are questions that have to be answered, and since there's a city representative here, I think it's more fair to just state it. At all costs, you want to avoid the headline, city and/or county evicts family. Trust me, you want to avoid that. The other thing, the issue I think that needs to be looked at, because I know what we're trying to do, but what if the employee leaves the county or the city employment? When they apply for the apartment and then all of a sudden they get a raise or a promotion. All of that is going to have to be figured out, and that's that's why I think it's important to have a private operator that we contract with ultimately, however it's put together, I don't know. But I can see several questions. The emancipated youth, is there a time limit that they can be in there? What if they get a job and they're making reasonable money where they could get a market rate apartment? So I'm playing devil's advocate because I don't want anybody to think this is going to be easy, because it won't be easy. But it's certainly worth looking at, and I know there are several, most of the cities and the county have a lot of surplus at this point property, and so there might be a way to look at a coalition to do some workforce housing. But ultimately, I don't think the county wants to be the landlord, or the city.
Thank you. Supervisor Bennett?
Thank you. I appreciate these comments. A few things. One, I want to compliment the city. My office has been attending some of the meetings that the subcommittee meetings that they've set out there. At the behest of the city, they asked all the major employers in the city to do a survey of their employees. They didn't just do it for themselves, and we have sent out an email survey of our county employees as part of this effort to sort of try to understand what's going on. So we're starting to move in this direction. I would offer, when the references are made about what about people that make $30,000, in the private sector, I would offer we have a lot of employees here that make $30,000 right now. So we have those employees in that same category. This is a small parcel. We can't do everything with this parcel. I very much appreciate some of the questions and issues that Supervisor Michael is bringing up. This won't be easy. Quite frankly, the easy thing to do would be sit back and this problem will continue to fester. It won't be easy, but that's what we are charged with doing, is trying to work hard and find solutions to problems. Because this is a small parcel, I really view this as simply a way for us to begin to the learning curve about all of the things that we have to come up with to address this issue of workforce housing for everybody in Ventura County, and in particular for our employees here in Ventura County. There are many issues. Cal State University Channel Islands has already gone through this learning curve. They're not finished with it. They're going to continue to learn, but they've addressed some of these issues already. What do you do when the employee no longer works for you? How, what rate of appreciation if it's a for sale? Will these units be for sale, or will they be rental units? Which one's the better way to sort of bring in those employees? All of that needs to be worked out. And will be a learning curve that we will learn, and I don't think for a minute this is going to be the last one of these. I think we'll have to get more and more creative here. Coastal counties in a Mediterranean climate are going to have high housing prices. It's just fundamental. That's what the market will do. It's a fact of life. There's just nowhere near enough land and available for all the people that love to live in a Mediterranean climate. The few places that this exists in the world. So this just gets us started with regard to that. All of those issues have to be worked out. What I enjoy the thought of rolling our sleeves up and having now sort of an official way that we can join the city that has already been in the process. Now we have sort of an official way that we can join the city and really start to investigate. Up to this point in time, I've had these sort of off-channel, informal conversations. Yeah, well, what about this problem? What about that problem? And you can't move them very well. You can move them much better now in this environment. So I would welcome the board support and know that there's tons that still needs to be done in terms of workforce housing for all kinds of people, emancipated youth, everything else, and I'm certainly committed to keep trying to find more and more of these things and try to roll them forward. So I'd like to move the recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, and 2 more comments at least.
Just a couple of comments. I realize it's a very small parcel, but it will set down some policy direction. It will set down a direction. And that's why I would hope that whoever reviews this, the CEO and the City of Ventura, that will look at workforce housing and not limit it simply to housing for public employees.
Thank you. And
All employees.
And Supervisor Long?
Just one quick comment about your thought, Supervisor Parks, about, is it time for the county to have some discussion on policy of entering into the mortgage business? And the other piece of that, or another tool, has been mentioned to us with the work of the Home Committee and the conference that will be coming up in November, looking at a regional trust fund, housing trust fund. So we have to look at all the tools and explore them all, and where the policy decisions for this board rest certainly are going to be with the land that is county-owned land, the public trust of that land, and then looking at how we can incentivize or build better cooperation in the solutions. So, good work.
And I might note that there has been in place, and I'm not positive the county has it, but I do know at least through some organizations that we fund through our community development block grants, there are already programs very well established providing first-time homebuyer assistance. So it isn't a stretch to say, now let's provide it to our own employees too. And I think that is a really good way to at least reach out to the thousands of employees instead of the couple that may be able to stay here. It depends on the mix in terms of this particular parcel. It seems to me it's small enough. It may be that the type of employee you want working there is a social worker who can assist with the emancipated foster youth, so that it may be more a function, and where my emphasis is in providing the homes for the foster youth, emancipating foster youth, and then having the assistance there in the facility. So that might be one way of looking at it. It's a little bit different than what you've proposing, but it's certainly on the table. And I also really like the fact that it is a collaboration. And I think because the county oversees the unincorporated area, and we look at putting development within the cities, not in our farmland, for example, that this kind of regional cooperation, like you mentioned, Supervisor Long, where we can assist the cities in providing affordable housing in the city where there's transit and all that, is a very good idea. So I like the idea that this is the first step towards that, and maybe we'll see more of that collaboration to take care of this need. And I also agree 100% with Supervisor Flynn in terms of who needs the housing out there the most. And we want to make sure that everybody does have a home. We want to get people off the streets. So with that, I don't see any objections on this board. Any other follow-up, Supervisor Bennett? No. Okay, then that looks like that passes unanimously, and we'll have more discussions as this gets hammered out a little better. Thank you very much. Yes, and then I want to, when we come back from this little break, we have a couple of staff members waiting patiently on our Public Works Agency and Sheriff's Department that I'd like to get to before we launch into our watershed, because that's going to take 15, 20, 30 minutes. Thank you. We'll come back from our 5-minute recess. We have just a couple of quick items, and then we'll move on to our time-certain item, and that is item 32 with our Public Works Agency on our traffic mitigation agreement. And Mr. Britt, you brought a prop?
I brought a prop, yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I might start this out, just to have a correction, it's Supervisory District Number 3. It said 5 on the board.
Well,
Thank you.
if that's the only mistake this year.
That's the only mistake.
That you catch me at, I'll be happy. Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Ducey, the item before you today is the approval of reciprocal traffic impact mitigation fee with the City of Port Hueneme. And I do think it is a bit of a significant milestone in that this is number 10 of 10 cities. And if you'd asked me 14 years ago if we thought we would do it, I'd said, yeah, we could probably do it in about a year, maybe 2 years max. It's been 14 years getting all 10 cities to sign in to some level of reciprocal agreement. A lot of it's been due to the efforts of Mr. Coons and specifically Mr. Nazir Alani of my office. Had he not been calling the city representatives on a regular basis, meeting with them, going to city council meetings, it just would never have happened. And so we don't have balloons or horns, so one wave, that's enough. That's all I can do. We're not exactly a real enthusiastic group in public works sometimes. The city also asked in their letter forwarding the signed agreement as part of the city council's action that VCTC, the Transportation Commission, and the county support their goal of getting truck traffic in particular off of some of the city streets. They did not condition the approval of the agreement or make any change to the agreement with request to that. It is consistent with longstanding regional transportation planning and our general plan and agreements by your board, although they go back several decades, to be honest with you. What we suggest your board do is acknowledge this request and request through Public Works to ask VCTC to advise your board in a report back of the planned future status of this project, which is essentially the relinquishment of State Route 1 through the cities of Port Hueneme and Oxnard, and reassignment to Rice Avenue as part of a long-term goal of the regional transportation planning. Should you have any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them. And otherwise,
Comments or questions? Supervisor Bennett?
Yeah, I guess rhetorically, I'd say, how did you do it? My real comment is just congratulations. It was, I've only been here 6 years, and you've been battling for 6 years, trying to pick up the last few cities and stuff. So my congratulations, a great professional effort on your part to sort of pull people in when you didn't have very much leverage to pull them in and get this point. Really remarkable. Thank you.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Supervisor Long?
I too would like to thank you for all the good work. Port Hueneme being the last, and I think Bob Hunt, as most of you know, is retiring as city manager, and it was on his to-do list to get this done before he left. So I think it was good work by Nazir and certainly Butch and convincing them that although they are small but mighty, they are still part of a regional system, and it really demonstrates that we can work together regionally, and it's an excellent model, so good work. Move the recommended action.
Second. Motion and a second, and seeing no objections, that passes. And
Can I ask?
Probably, yes.
Just a quick question, which is totally off the subject, but did the train crossing get fixed at a reasonable time this morning?
I honestly do not know.
You don't know yet?
We called in, and they were supposedly responding, but I don't know if it's been fixed. I haven't been able to get a call back.
What a nightmare. But thank you. You were the only one that I knew the number that I could call you.
And Supervisor Long?
Just to make sure that in my motion included the request by the City of Port Hueneme to have the comments to VCTC regarding their concerns with truck traffic and making sure that we work together cooperatively on truck traffic impacts in Port Hueneme.
We
Second,
will
accept-
ensure the report comes back to your board.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and that's part of the motion
Yes.
that was
Yes,
approved.
that's part of the
And-
recommended action.
And being the newest board member up here and realizing it took you over a dozen years to get this, I'm still eager to see us start moving and look at renegotiating some of those that we need to as our traffic network has changed and our emphasis have changed over this period of time. And I know that sounds terrible to say after all this work, but I think some of this is, some of the older ones actually need to be revised and to become more current. So I encourage you to keep up the good work.
Not at all. It makes for good job security, so we can maybe apply for some of that new county housing in the future.
And if we can find a faster way to go about this, maybe through some regional cooperation, maybe through VCTC or whatever it may take, but this is, it shouldn't be this difficult. This is requiring the cities to have the developers pay for their impacts in the unincorporated county. It stands to reason they should.
If I might suggest, quite frankly, that really is more of a function of a regional transportation board, as the commission is, rather than what in essence is a small department of the county. But we'll continue to work with the board to do whatever we need to do.
Thank you very much. So that is approved unanimously, and we have two quick items from the Sheriff's Department. Nice to see you with us this morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Dorsey. Before you is a request from the sheriff and also from the district attorney's office for the board to approve the agreement between all the law enforcement agencies in Ventura County. That is the 5 cities with their own police departments, the 5 cities that are policed by the sheriff, and the district attorney's office. For you to approve this memorandum of agreement and for you to authorize the sheriff to sign this MOA and for you to authorize the establishment of full-time fixed-term allocations for 3 positions. These are for office systems coordinator, civilian positions, to do the actual forensic examination of computers that are seized in connection with our investigation of crimes that occurred here in the county. This has been a need that we had foreseen many years ago, and because we are members of the Southern California High-Tech Crime Task Force, we thought that it would be good for the cities to also contribute to this effort. More and more computers, cell phones, personal digital assistants, all kinds of digital storage equipment are seized in the course of our investigations, not just because they are directly related to the offense committed, but they are peripherally associated with the crime that had occurred or suspected to have occurred. As you know, cell phones now have a lot of memory, and those have to be downloaded, and for the most part, we obtain an incredible amount of evidence that could be directly connected with the crime that we are investigating. The efforts of the few whom we have assigned to the task force have been far outstripped by the need and the sheer number of computers that we have seized. And therefore, we are asking your board to authorize us to have these 3 full-time civilian positions so they could do the work that would otherwise would be done by sworn personnel.
Move approval.
Thank you. Thank you. And this is also supported by the CEO. And seeing no objections to this, that passes. And the next item is yours, too?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. The next one is what we call the CalMet program grant. We are asking that the board approve our application to this program, and that you also permit us to apply with the National Association of Drug Diversion Investigators for a small grant between $5,000 to $10,000. This program was, our participation in this program was arranged through the State Sheriff's Association. And we have been advised that there is good potential for us to get about $350,000 from this particular program.
Great. Very important one. Motion and a second. Seeing no objections, that passes. Thank you for your reports this morning.
Thank you very much.
And now we'll move on to that one that we've all been waiting for, item 21. Sorry it was a bit delayed. This is on our Watershed Coalition and the incredible efforts of the Watershed Protection District and Sue Hughes.
Morning, Chair, Parks, members of the board, Mr. Dursey. For the record, my name is Sue Hughes. I'm the legislative analyst for the County of Ventura. Today, I'm wearing a different hat. I also am the co-chair of the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County, and today I'm going to be talking a lot about integrated regional water management planning. It rolls off my tongue really quickly because I've been saying it a lot for the last 4 years. So what I wanted to give you an update on and let you know what I'm doing is running around to all of the city councils and the boards of the folks that are stakeholders in the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County. So I want to let you know what it is I've been doing for the last couple of months and what we're looking for in the next several weeks. So to give you an idea of, I'm going to start with sort of a little bit of background. Some of you, well, you've all heard this before, but I'm going to try and do it as quickly as I can. In 2002, we were approached by Sonoma County Water Agency, partly because the County of Ventura has a relationship with Sonoma County Water Agency because we both are eligible for salmon fisheries money. And several years ago, there was a problem with getting that funding from the feds to the states to the locals. So the Sonoma County Water Agency got us involved with their efforts to get that funding. So they thought of us when they decided to put together something in 2002 called the Northern and Coastal Coalition. And it was to get Proposition 50 passed by the voters of California. So they said, are you guys interested in joining? So we came to your board in 2002 and said, hey, we'd really like to bring some money to Ventura County. Can we join? And you said, regional money sounds great to us. Of course you can join. So we've been part of that coalition. Then in November of 2002, Proposition 50 passed. And there is a chapter in Proposition 50 called Chapter 8. It's Integrated Regional Water Management Planning. And in order to get IRWMP money, you must be part of an Integrated Regional Water Management Planning group. So you sit down and you think, okay, what's a group? Well, there's things in statute and there's things in the guidelines. Statute, we have to do. Guidelines, we try to make comments to, so that the guidelines are different than the statute. Statute says a group is composed of 3 public agencies, 2 of which have statutory authority over water. So that's what started the ball rolling on how do we do this. So the first thing we did was we sat down in a room and we said, who has anything to do with water in Ventura County, and let's invite them to a meeting. So we invited every single public water agency, because there's 178 private water agencies in Ventura County. We thought we'd start with the public agencies. We started with all of them, all of the cities, all of the sanitation districts, any of the special districts, anybody who in any way touched water. We began a series of what we called IRWM meetings in 2003. And then the state came out with their guidelines that says this is how you put a group together and this is how you go about developing an integrated regional water management plan. Now, what had been happening geographically in the County of Ventura, in the Cayugas Creek watershed, they have been working on, with the direction of Supervisor Michaels, an integrated plan since 1996. So the state was very unclear in their guidelines as to what a region was. They said a region may submit an application for funding for $50 million. So the Cayuga Steering Committee went forward with an application on their own, and what we called the Ventura Countywide Group was actually the Ventura and the Santa Clara River watersheds. So we each submitted an application of May of 2005 for Integrated Regional Water Management Planning grant money. We submitted on the Ventura County side a $25 million grant, and in the Cayugas they submitted a $50 million grant. Then an interesting thing happened. The state of California got 50 grant applications. And in the first round of funding, did I mention there was only $150 million available in the first round of funding? And the funding that they received requests for totaled $1.4 billion. And no matter how you try and do new math, you cannot divide $1.4 billion into $150 million. It just doesn't work out very well. So the state said, here's what we're going to do. You all submitted these grant applications. We're going to go through them, and we're going to, they came up with a list of the top 16 out of those. But they said, here's what's going to happen. Some of you will need to consolidate your regions. So you in Ventura County, if you consolidate, if you voluntarily agree to consolidate the Cayugas, Ventura, and Santa Clara River watersheds into one region, you may apply for funding. Now, we weren't the lone group asked to consolidate. In Los Angeles County, just as an example, they submitted 5 applications. And the state said, you, Los Angeles County, we don't care how big you are, you're no different than any other region. We're calling you one region. You may submit 1 application. And because of what happened with the funding, $1.4 billion worth of requests, and they only had $150 million in round 1, they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to fund 6 of you out of the top 16, and this is how we scored after the first round. We will fund 6 of you absolutely, positively, $25 million. So now you need to sit down with your region. You've consolidated, and we know you, Ventura County region, have submitted $75 million of application. You need to narrow it down to $25 million. So when you look at this list, you see that the Cayugas/Ventura Consolidated, which we're now called the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County, that group right there, we tied for 7th. After the first round, we tied for 7th with Orange County. The state said we absolutely, positively will fund 6 of you at $25 million. There was a little issue here because Plumas County, which scored 3rd, they only asked for $10 million. So we said to the state, hey, we have a question. One of those regions only asked for $10 million, and you're going to absolutely positively fund 6 of us at $25 million. So what happens if they score just as high in the second round? How are you going to do that math? And they said, here's what we're going to do. If anybody who scores in the top 6 is asking for less than $25 million, we will pull money out of the second round of funding. We will fund them, but we will still absolutely, positively fund 6 of you at $25 million. So that means if you take Plumas County out of the mix after round 1, we're tied for 6th with Orange County. So just to keep that in mind. I've given you a couple handouts. One is the PowerPoint presentation. One is this map. It's probably easier to see if you're looking at it. And then the brochure that we use when we run around doing these presentations. This is a very telling description of what's happened in California. Everyone was eligible so long as you were part of a group to apply for Chapter 8 funding. It's hard to see on this map, but 43 of California's 58 counties are part of an integrated regional water management plan. There's kind of a gap, the white areas through some of the central part of California and Imperial County. But as you'll notice, the darker portions are the northern part of the state, and there's a few of us down in the southern part of the state. There's one other thing that statute says. Not only is there $150 million to be spent, but the money has to be spent half in Northern California and half in Southern California. It just so happens if you look at the top 6 after round 1, half of us in Northern California and half are from Southern California. But we also asked the question, because I'm sure someone's going to ask me, okay, in that first round of funding, are they going to fund half in North and half in South? Well, statute doesn't limit them to that. They can do whatever they want. So we're just waiting to see what they're going to do. But it's telling that 43 of California's 58 states found this important enough to sit down with everyone in the region and say, how do we get a piece of the pie? So if you look at the purple section up in the northern part of the state, that's the North Coast region, and there's 7 or 8 counties that work together to get this funding. This becomes important in a second. So where we've been in March, April, the 2 groups officially consolidated into the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County, and on June 28th, we submitted an application. We came to your board just before that, so that's probably the last time you heard me talk about this. We went to your board, came to your board with the approval to submit that $25 million application. To remind everyone, there are 3 projects in the Ventura River watershed, 3 projects in that application in the Santa Clara, and 5 in the Cayugas. And something that I think is very important in this, that's worked really well for all of this, The experts in their own watershed are the ones who decided which projects should rise to the top. So if you're an expert in the Cayugas watershed, for example, you weren't in the Ventura River watershed saying, what you guys really need in the Ventura River watershed is XYZ. And the Ventura River watershed folks weren't doing the same thing to Cayugas. So you spoke for what the needs in your watershed were. Because what's interesting in Ventura County is the three watersheds are so completely different than each other. You have the Ventura River watershed, which imports absolutely no state water. They're completely self-sufficient, which makes them much different than the Cayugas Creek watershed, which is an imported watershed. So we submitted that application. If you're interested, it's on the website. It's a mere 475 pages long. If you'd so like to peruse through it, there is a hard copy one in my office if you'd like to really just look at the hard copy. We will know in November whether or not we are one of the groups. That is the final draft of the plan. So that's what I've been running around telling everybody. So November we will know. Now, this is probably the most telling slide on this, and it's very hard to read for a reason. Those are the Watershed Coalition of Ventura County stakeholders, and we could have done it on 4 or 5 slides, but I think the impact is much better when you see the amount of people who participate in this. There are more than 60 agencies in Ventura County when you include the cities, the special districts, and we wanted to be inclusive and not just have public agencies. We thought it was important to invite the non-governmental organizations, the nonprofits, so you have the Surf Riders and the Matilaha Coalition and the Nature Conservancy and the Trust for Public Land and Resource Conservation Districts. They're all part of this planning effort. Everyone has a voice, everyone speaks, and what's been really nice about this is it's really stayed not political, so that you have the experts in their fields have been the ones saying this is our water needs in our area. So this, as a reminder, is what I've been running around to all the city councils. Last night I was at the city of Ventura. Next week I'll be at Ojai Sanitary District. Tomorrow night is Cayugas Municipal Water District's board meeting. I've been to the city of Fillmore, to the city of Oxnard. There's several of them coming up. Because what we want them to know is this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and your staff, in our case it'll be me, will be coming back in several weeks soon to ask for the adoption of that integrated regional water management plan that was set in front of you this morning, that 307-page document that has been put together by experts in their fields. It wasn't just a bunch of us who sat down and said, gee, how do we write this? So Section 5 is probably the most important section to start with. It's the water management strategies. The state of California said, here's the 20 water management strategies. You must, for this process, talk about 11 of them. And we at WCVC think the best way to do is take the high road on all issues, so we said let's do all 20. So what's been nice is the plan was released last Thursday. We have a very short turnaround time, October 27th, for people to read it. We're proud to say some people have already read the thing from front to back. So but the people who wrote that are the water experts. They know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about, and all of us are reviewing that to make sure that we haven't missed anything. Oh, that other thing about statute, one of the things in statute, January 1st, 2007, is a date that can't change. We must have an adopted integrated regional water management plan in order to receive any grant funding, and it must be done by January 1st. So that's why we've been running around letting everybody know who we are and what we are. Now, one thing that I want to share, and the board has already taken a position, but just as a reminder, Proposition 84 is the water bond that's on the ballot in November. Now, we have had 4 years to talk to the author of Proposition 50, because same author for Proposition 84. So we've had 4 years to say, you know what would work better for us than dividing the money by Northern and Southern California is to divide the money by region, by hydrologic region. So what you see here is the water bond is $5.4 billion. Remember that $1.4 billion in needs for integrated regional water management planning? There's $1 billion available in integrated regional water management planning in Prop 84. It's divided by hydrologic region. You'll notice there's a region missing because, you know, we always like the drama of putting in the one for us. So the one for LA and Ventura
Excuse me,
County.
when you say hydrologic regions, you mean by watersheds?
It's hydrologic regions by the regional board, the state
Okay.
water board,
Oh.
and then the regional board is divided into hydrologic regions.
Okay, thank
So
you.
Ventura and LA are part of Region 4, which is missing up there, because I like to do this and show that our region would share $215 million. That's a whole lot different than $25 million for Ventura County and $25 million for those 5 plans going on in Los Angeles County. So that North Coast region, they also, if you just take an example, the region that was in purple on the map, right now they can only get $25 million. They'd be eligible for $37 million under Proposition 84. So that gives an idea of what the potential is out there, because likely what will happen in the water communities, what we're hearing is we're not seeing general fund money being placed in the State Water Board or the Department of Water Resources for funding for these kinds of projects. So unless you're raising the money locally, probably water bonds is the way we're going to see these types of things funded.
Can I ask another question related to regions? The Malibu watershed is in Ventura County, but it's also partially in Los Angeles County. So because we're in that Los Angeles region, it includes the Malibu watershed.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And their planning efforts in the Malibu are taking place in Los Angeles County, but much like what's happening in the Santa Clara River, because the Santa Clara covers both Ventura and LA County, there are planning efforts in the upper reaches of the Santa Clara. There are planning efforts in Malibu. And so we're working together to make sure that our plans complement each other and that we are sharing information. And at some point, especially with the Santa Clara River, their plan will be intertwined with ours sometime in the future. So they're working on that right now. We have our own website, watershedcoalition.org, and it should be somewhere in that plan. Hopefully we managed to put that in there, but it is in the flyers that I've handed you. So at that point, if you have any questions, happy to answer any questions.
A lot of thorough documentation. Supervisor Flynn, and would you turn on your microphone? Could you turn on your microphone?
Proposition 50 was passed November of 2002.
Are there questions? Supervisor Long?
Just comment, I know it's been a tremendous amount of work, and just appreciation to all those who've stayed at the table, came to the table, will stay at the table to continue this work. I think we have a great opportunity here, and that's why the board really stepped out on Proposition 84, because we realize all the good work that's been done under the other opportunities. This one gives us the next leap forward. So you've been a solo but mighty leader there, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Supervisor Bennett has a question or
Yeah,
comment?
it takes some unique skill to bring all of these various agencies together, particularly water agencies that are sort of like genetically born to fight. And you've developed some really good skills in that area over the last few years. It's been nice watching them develop, and this is really a classic example of it actually paying dividends for us. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. And there's a great team that works on this. There's several county agencies that have worked on this plan, and Lynn Rodriguez sitting behind me, who's the consultant that has been in the water business for a long time. And the cooperation that we're getting from the county agencies and everyone else, it's just amazing. Thank you.
I would just encourage that we also look at trying to get public participation. I know we get a lot of the water agencies and public agencies, and that might be assisted by having meetings that aren't just during the day, but have some in the evening. It's great information, and it should be shared, and we need to get that public input also, more public input. We have 2 public comment cards. We have Dee Zink, followed by Russ Baggerly. And you're with Callejas.
Yes, Callejas. And I am here on behalf of Callejas Municipal Water District, but I'm also co-chair with Sue Hughes of the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County on behalf of the Callejas Creek Watershed, and in particular the steering committee, who asked that when we merged our plans that we sit at the table and make sure that all of the information is integrating. I wanted to come today to let you know that knitting together the Callejas Creek and the Ventura County Integrated Regional Water Management Plans in a way that recognizes the value of regional perspective and respects both the local ideologies and the unique characteristics of each watershed has been a monumental task. Individuals from county staff, the cities, the water agencies, The private and nonprofit environmental organizations who are at the table really are to be acknowledged and thanked for their broad vision and the hard work in identifying all of the potential water resource strategies that are available to us to address not just our human needs, but our ecosystem needs and our economic needs in this county. Working together, we can better assure that projects that we are planning provide multiple benefits for all of the users of our precious water supply. I personally feel that the $25 million grant application that the Watersheds Coalition submitted has a very strong chance of success. I'm looking forward to November. There's been a fundamental shift in state water planning efforts and state water policy. The last update to the state water plan in 1995 determined that the state is really going to meet its long-term water supply objectives through this idea of integrated regional water management planning. We see support for this type of planning from the public based on the citizens' initiatives that you saw, the beginnings of the vision on Prop 13 and Prop 40, really articulated with Proposition 50, and now we have Proposition 84 that we'll see on the ballot in November. So our job is to do the work, to integrate our projects, to listen to each other, and to see that we effectively implement this vision, our vision for Ventura County. And it's really been a pleasure to work with Sue Hughes and Lynn and all of the other entities, and I'm really amazed, frankly, at how we've been able to recognize the very specific, unique characteristics in each of the watersheds and still find ways that we can cross watersheds and, frankly, need to look under watersheds because groundwater is a significant part of our resource in this county. And so this is a beginning effort. I consider this a preliminary plan. We already have plans to continue to update it, revise it. It will be a living document for us, and we're looking forward to the next round of funding. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for Callejas' great participation. Russ Baggerly with the Casitas Municipal Water District.
Chair Parks and members of the board, good morning, Mr. Dursey. We haven't met. I'm here today as a representative of the Board of Directors for the Casitas Municipal Water District and for the Ventura River Watershed Council. And, of course, to try to get you to support this plan. This whole thing started a long time ago, and it's attained really mythic proportions. It was Herculean in nature, and you should recognize that this is the first time in recorded history that water purveyors and everyone associated with water of all sorts work together as a single entity. That was uncommon. But we were all inspired by our common goal. That was getting money. Don't lose sight of that. We were led on by our intrepid triumvirate, collectively known as Sudilin, so that we could achieve our common goal, getting money. The plan was completed, but it was really not easy to do. On the one hand, we had the gentle persuasion of our three superhero women water sprites with their gentle persuasion and all of their happy workers supporting the effort. On the other hand, we had the Northern Water Gods from the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Resources Control Board telling us that if you don't play nice together, you're not going to get your goal. So we played nice. Now it's your turn. You get to review the plan, read all 400 pages of it, hope you don't get a sty. But it's a great plan. Did I mention it's all about getting money? And that's the way it's going to be now and in the future. We have to have a plan adopted. So whether or not you like the plan or not, it doesn't matter. You got to adopt it if you want to get money. It's a no-brainer. But our plan is great. People really did work together very hard to integrate water projects into something that actually makes sense for all 3 watersheds of Ventura County. I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Flynn?
Yeah, I want to thank you and congratulate you for your leadership and all the people that participated. But one big positive thing that also came out of all this is we have Lynn back.
Thank you. Do we have comments or a motion on this item?
I'll make the motion because I believe that there's been a lot of hard work put into this. But an aside comment is that both Dee and Sue kind of glossed over some of the very difficult issues that were going on behind the scenes during this, marrying of the 3 plans. And, they did just yeoman's work. I think without Dee and without Sue, we would not have been able to get the agreement between Cayugas, Santa Clara, and Ventura watershed groups. And my group was probably the most resistive in the beginning because we have been working the longest and were the farthest along and didn't want to be sucked in, if you would, to starting over again. But they worked and worked and worked and finally got through the issues, and I just want to congratulate them and make sure that they get plenty of public kudos, because there were times that I was going to pull my hair out, so I know they were really frustrated. So thank you both.
Thank you, Supervisor Michaels. So we have a motion there?
Yes, I said I make the motion.
Yes, and now we have a second.
Okay.
Seeing no objections, thank you. That motion passes, and it is an epic document, and we look forward to the fruits of your labor. Thank you. That concludes the regular portion of our agenda. Pardon me. Oh, the consent correspondence agenda. Thank
Second.
you. Motion and a second, and that passes unanimously. We now have our closed session items, and as I understand, item 22 and 24, which are labor negotiations, will not be part of that closed session, and we'll just be doing item 23. And County Council, do you have any, will we anticipate an announcement?
No.
No announcement? Okay, then what we'll do then is adjourn from our closed session, and that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
See you next week. Actually, Kathy,